Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, and again, you will receive a link to the recording and the presentation as soon as we're finished this morning. So we're going to go through what's new for 2017. I'm going to go through just some basic information first, and then we'll do a demo so I can show you what this looks like on the live site. So one thing that we did at the very end of December is we updated a student's graded work. Now, as a teacher, you may not go into the student part of the site very often, but if you ever are wondering, did my students complete this assignment? Maybe you're not seeing it on your end. So oftentimes if you were to contact us, we would just log in as that student and go to graded work. And in the past, everything was just honestly a little bit jumbled together, and it was kind of hard to tell what was what. So in the graded work, we've added links at the top where the assignments can be filtered to assignments only, meaning activities that were specifically assigned by a teacher, or you can filter just to see independent practice. And what I mean by independent practice is if a student were to go to a content page, such as 6th grade science or Algebra 1, and they were to work through activities on their own, we consider that independent practice on the site, and they can choose whether to report that to their teachers or not. So now in their graded work, you can filter between the two to see what was assignments and what was done on their own. Another really big change, and this is probably the most helpful thing, is that group assignments now stay together. So what that means is if you were to assign a group assignment and a student completed it, if you were to go to their graded work, it would look like all different assignments, and you couldn't really tell before what was part of the group assignment. So that is a fairly big change that makes it much easier to figure out what they've done. And we also added a completed column to very quickly show the date completed and how much time the student spent, so you can see that at a glance. So here's a picture, and again, I'll show you this on the live site. Here are the links I was referring to where a student can view all of their results together, only their assignments, or view my practice, and that is the independent practice that they've chose to complete on their own. And then here again is that new completed column with the date and how much time they spent. So that is not the time that they finished and submitted the assignment. It's just simply how long it took them from that begin button to submit. Okay, another area that we've recently made a few enhancements is creating a benchmark. Our benchmarks are probably our most heavily used feature on the site, so we definitely try and make those in that process as user-friendly as possible. So a couple changes. First, in step 2, and then we'll look at screenshots of this, we have the option, if you're working in custom mode, where you can look through all of the questions by standard. We do have some questions that can be turned into short answer instead of multiple choice. And so in the past, you had to click on the question, and then you would see an additional checkbox if you wanted to use it as a short answer question. We just made that a little bit more user-friendly, where that short answer checkbox will always be shown. So it really will just save you a click and make it easier to use short answer questions. Then in step 5, when creating a benchmark, which is where you can add free response questions if you'd like to, we had a default point value of 10 points for a question. So oftentimes what happened is a teacher or administrator would go through and build a benchmark, add a free response question, and by default it would be worth 10 points. And if they're just going too quickly, you may not even notice that because it was already done for you. And so by the time students have finished taking the benchmark and teachers going in to grade it, they were realizing, wait a second, I didn't want the free response question to be worth this much. It's basically worth 10 multiple choice questions, and maybe they only wanted it to be worth, 2 or 3. So it was just kind of skewing the results a little bit. So we removed that default point value. So now every time you will have to choose the point value, but I think in return it's going to give your benchmark the weights that you want it to with the multiple choice questions and the free response. So here's step 2. This is in custom mode where you can pick your standard and you see the list of questions. And the only thing again that's different here is this display as short answer checkbox is always shown. So you can just click that little checkbox and it's going to display it in short answer. So it's very minor, but for the teachers who use short answer, it will save you a couple clicks there. And then here in free response, step 5, when you select your question over here on the right, you'll have to manually pick your point value. So again, that's no longer pre-filled for you. Okay, then something else that we are busy doing is working with the assignment system. Very minor change, we recently renamed the setting retest missed questions to retry missed items, especially for a benchmark where you might have a performance task. It just made sense to say items. But the big thing is the retest versus retry. We just felt like retest was sometimes confusing because they're not really retesting that whole assignment. They're just retrying the questions that they missed. The functionality for that did not change. And we do have a feature enhancement coming for students, because what happens is if you give them the option to retry what they missed, they have to immediately do that as soon as they get their results page. There's a button where they can retry, but if they go anywhere else on the site, so if they go back to their home page or they go into their graded work and they're trying to retry their missed items, at that point it's too late because it doesn't let you go back and do it later. So we're going to change it to where as soon as students finish, before they get their score or anything like that, they're going to get in a very large screen the option to retry their missed items right then and there. They can decide yes or no before they even get to that result screen, and maybe they miss it at that point. So we do have changes to just make that better for students in case they don't notice that button and then it's too late. Something else that we just changed last week is if you're building a group assignment in the last step, you'll notice a few things. First, we simplified it to where a group assignment can only have one start date and one end date for the entire group. So previously, every single assignment within a group could have a different start or end date, but we found that less than 1% of all group assignments were chosen to have different dates. So we decided to simplify the interface to just offer the one start and one end date. And again, we'll save time. To do that, the calendar tool is more user-friendly, and we also added a note there for the end date that assignments are available to students for 2 months after the end date. That's something that wasn't really obvious before. We didn't have that displayed for teachers to know. So, you might wonder on the end date, why doesn't the assignment go away? And that's because we do leave it open. It will let you know that the assignment is past due, but students can still go in and complete it. And we also added a note that you can always deactivate your assignment. So if you no longer want students to have access, you can deactivate it at any point, and then students will no longer be able to work on it. So here's the interface for a group assignment. You just have your one start date, your one end date, so it really cleaned up this quite a bit. So you have your different settings, but you don't have those date columns like you did before. And again, we just added a couple notes, for the start date. If you choose a date in the future, then students are not going to see it until then. And then the one I just mentioned, that assignments are available to students for 2 months after the end date. But of course, you're welcome to deactivate it at any point. So here are some future plans that we have. None of these are live yet. They're all in the works, but these are things that will be coming. We've done a big review of our assignment system and the different settings that we offer for every type of assignment. So we're going to make some changes. One example is that if you assign a video, right now you have no options. You can give it one attempt for your students and that's it. There's no minimum score, no retry, none of that. We're going to change it so that for a video, you can require a minimum score of a 100, and students will have as many chances as it takes, to watch that video and get the questions right. So that's something that will be changing because we heard several requests for that. We also, when you're assigning a set of practice questions, you have to right now pick and drill it down to one specific standard. We're going to add back the option where you can assign practice questions for an entire domain, and then it will randomly pick a bunch of standards within that domain. So you don't have to narrow it down to just one if that's not what you want. So we'll be adding that back. And then we'll also add the option to assign either a set of 5 or 10 practice questions because right now, more than likely the default number is 10 unless we just don't have as many questions in that particular standard, then it will automatically drop to 5. But for the most part, all of our sets are 10 questions. So sometimes that's great, especially for high schoolers if they have a longer length of time to complete those. But for especially elementary level or even middle school or struggling students, 5 questions might work better. And if you're just on a time limit, 5 questions might be better as well, because practice questions, unlike tests and benchmarks, cannot be saved. So if a student got to question 9 out of 10 and the bell rings and they exit out, they have to start all over from question 1 the next time they go in to work on it. So that will be something coming as well. All right, so I want to go ahead and log into the site just to show some of these things live to see how it works on the live site, and then I'll be happy to go through and answer any questions that anyone has, because I do want to try and wrap up in about 5 minutes in case anybody needs to go ahead and log off. So let me go ahead and get logged in here. Okay, so the first thing I want to point out is the student's graded work. And a really good thing to know is how to log in as a student. And if you log into your account, and let's say you have your list of classes here, if you go to the gear icon on the far right of any of your classes, you're going to have your list of students. You have a login link, so you don't even have to know, a student's login information. You just use that login link, and you'll be able to jump right in as that student. So over here on the right is a student's graded work, and again, this doesn't look a lot different except for that completed column and then these links up here. So right now I'm looking at everything, and we do have these little tooltip like question marks in case a student or you is wondering exactly what that and what those links mean. So here, if I view my assignments, here's what's been assigned. If I go to view my practice, here I can see here's a test that this student chose to do on their own. They reported it to the teacher and the class, but it wasn't something that was assigned to them. So that's, again, something new there. And then also for a group assignment, let me find a student who has one of those, because again, I mentioned that's probably one of the biggest helps is having the group assignment stay together. So let me log in as a different student. Okay, so graded work. Okay, so again, I can filter it between my assignments and my practice. All right, so here is a group assignment. It has a little plus. It says 7 assignment group, and when I click on it, now all of these activities are staying within the group, whereas before each of them would just have been listed like everything else. So it was very difficult to tell what was part of the group and what wasn't. So that makes it really easy. Now, one question is, let's say a student has only finished 2 activities within the group out of 7. If that were the case, then you would only see those 2 assignments listed. So that way you would know that they still have more to complete. So even if the entire group isn't finished, it doesn't matter. Whatever they have done will go into their graded work. So that's an example. Let me see if I can find a group where they haven't done everything. I don't see that I have one. So again, that's a big help if you ever need to log in as a student. Okay, so then other changes, again, are the benchmark system. If you go to create a new benchmark, and choose your content area. Choose custom so I can pick a standard and look at the questions. Okay, so again, that display a short answer checkbox is automatically shown. Before it was not shown, we just had this little pink SA, so a teacher would have to click on this and then they would see the checkbox. So to save yourself a step, all you have to do is just really click on that, and then in one click you can pick it as a short answer. And if you're looking specifically for short answer questions, you can sort over here on the right to short answer, and that will bring all of those to the top. And so that makes it really easy to be able, to find those. And that doesn't mean you have to use them as short answer. So if you don't want to, just use the main checkbox and leave the display as short answer part unchecked. And then that way it will still show as multiple choice if that's what you want. But again, if you're looking for a short answer, it makes it a little bit quicker to do that. Then in step 5, for adding free response, if you say yes, and again, pick your standard, find what question you want. If you click it, you could just, in the past, click continue and it would just keep on going for you. But again, now you have to select a point value, which you can choose anywhere between 1 to 20. So just keep in mind that every question that you picked in step 2, so multiple choice or short answer questions, are worth 1 point of your benchmark. So if you pick, 5 points, it's worth 5 questions. Obviously, if you pick 10, which was the default, it's worth 10 questions. So that's where the problem was, where it was just being weighted more heavily than some teachers intended it. So that, again, is a slight change, but that way you'll get really the free response weighted the way that you want. All right, so then finally, let me go to the assignments. And I know I'm going quick, but again, it's being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and review anything that you need to later. Okay, so I'm going to go to Create New Assignment and click on a group assignment. And really the advantage with a group over a single assignment, if you're not familiar, is that a group assignment allows you to choose a bunch of different activities all at once. So for teachers who are looking for that, it will save you some time. Okay, then I'm going to choose my content area. And I'm not going to add a test. I'm just going to go down to practice, pick a standard there, and then you'll see all the different activities to choose from. Okay, then when I have what I want, I'm going to continue to the last step, which is what was changed. So you have your one start date, one end date. So you can select when you want this to start and then when you want it to end. And just FYI, all of our end dates are restricted within 6 months of the current date. So you can't choose anything beyond 6 months. That's just because otherwise it's not going to show up for students over that 6-month mark. So that's why it cuts off there, in case you're wondering. And then you'll have your different settings, which haven't changed. It's just, again, the retry missed items is just worded a little bit differently. Your allow multiple attempts, which is having the student completely redo the assignment from the beginning to try and get a better score. And then the minimum score requirement, if that's something you want students to meet. So none of that is really different, just mainly the start and end date. Now, one question that some of you might have is, what about group assignments that you have already created? And for a group assignment that you've already created, nothing will change. So if you had already set it up with different dates, we are not changing and enforcing the single start and end date for those. The couple exceptions, however, if you were to go to a group assignment and go into your settings, if you wanted to change the start and end date, then it would affect the entire group. So if you tweak the dates, you will have to pick just one. Or if you were to go into a group assignment and edit, because actually that's one that students have already done. Let me find one where no one has finished it yet. Because what happens is once a student has finished an assignment, you can no longer edit it because that would potentially interfere with the student results. So when you click edit, it really just duplicates it and creates a new one. So let me go into one where nobody's done a group assignment yet. Okay, so this one, if I expand it, I can see that no one has finished. So I can edit. And I'm just going to continue through. Let's say I want to add a set of vocabulary. Okay, so here, again, if you're editing a group assignment you had already created, you're going to have the one start and the one end date. So just keep that in mind. However, if you already have students who have started working on a group assignment, there's no way for you to edit it, so your dates wouldn't change whatsoever. And again, this really only affects a very small number of group assignments in the first place, since we found that less than 1% had different start and end dates to begin with. So I think that's everything that I wanted to go over as far as the little tweaks that we've made and kind of what's coming down the pipeline. I'll be happy at this time to answer any questions that anyone has. You do have a chat box in your control panel, so you can type in questions there, and I'll answer them for the whole group. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your morning. Feel free to log off, and I will send an email with the recording and with the presentation, so you have that in case you need it. And also, I'm going to type in my email in the chat box. It's just Shannon@USATestprep.com. Again, thanks so much for your time. And we do offer these type of training webinars once a month. So just keep your eyes out in your email for the topic for next month. If you have any suggestions about training webinar topics that you would like to see, feel free to type those suggestions to me in the chat box, and I'll be happy to pass those along.